Welcome back, welcome back. We're going to be kicking off where we left off again. Sort of like going through a little bit more on this action method and how we sort of like um, render a template to the screen or render a template for our client browsers. Because I didn't actually discuss a lot about that in the last video, and I said I want to try and make these as detailed as possible because I'm aware that I'm the one that built this framework, and it's in my interest to get you guys to know the ins and out of it and how we go about doing what we want to do with it. So we got my editor open up again. We got this index action method, as I'm saying, must be a protected method and must be suffixed with an action string, right? So I'm going to take this out again. I'm going to say echo to say welcome, just something generic like that. I'm going to switch my screen, I'm going to reload, and there we go. We got that welcome text. Just increase this a bit. So you can see it a bit more. So that's essentially an echo statement. But obviously we're not going to be echoing any statement like that. We're going to be returning a method that's going to be a method that's going to find a template for us and render that template to the screen. So the way we do that in this framework is like any other framework you've come across, any other MVC framework that you've come across. We got something like this render. As I'm saying, there's two methods. There's a render method, and you're not seeing what I'm seeing actually. Let me switch my screen. Sorry about that. So I've got this render, or you could say this view, which is what I should be using. So this view, and this method takes in two arguments. The first argument is going to be the path to that file that we want to render, and the second argument is going to be the context that we can pass to that template. And when I say context, meaning any variables we can define as an array, as a key value pair array, and as a second argument, and we can use those variables in our template to display any kind of data that those variables contain. So first argument is going to be the template, and using PHP Storm, it sort of like tells you, gives you name arguments, so you know exactly what parameter that is required. So we haven't got our template yet, so we're going to create our first template, and the structure of this is also important. So let's close this down. And within our app directory, I'm going to create a template directory. It's going to call new directory, call it template, just like so. And within that directory, I'm going to create a home directory, and this is going to be lowercase. Now, it's also important to know that the convention when you are working with this particular framework, unlike many other frameworks as well, is we sort of like name our directory according to our controller, and we name the files within that directory according to the methods within that controller. So we've got our home directory and we've got our index action method. So I'm going to be creating a template called index. New file. It's an HTML file as well, right? It's going to be index, just like so. Now at the moment we haven't got any sort of like templating engine set up. We haven't got any dedicated layout templates. That is something we're going to be doing as we go along as well. But I just want to show you like how we render a template and how easy that is. So let's close these files. I'm not using these. So in our home controller, we're going to be trying to find that index file that we just created. So it's going to be slash. Actually, I said something wrong. If I take you back to my config file, which is going to be my routes config file, you notice that we've got this client directory. And I did say, I think it's the first video that I sort of like forgotten what they were. What this is internally, we are pointing all of our front-end template within a subdirectory within our template directory called client. Now we can change that if we want to something else, but I'm going to leave it as client. So what I'm going to delete this for a second. And within my template directory, I'm going to create a subdirectory called client. Just like so. Client. And within that directory, sorry, it's not a directory, it's a file. Let's delete that. New directory, client, just like so. And we're going to create all of our front-end controllers within this client directory. So I'm going to say new directory home, and then we're going to be creating our index.html file, just like so. Right, so that's the convention. We got our template directory, we got our client directory, which is going to contain all of our client controllers or our front-end controllers. And within that client directory, we're going to be creating subdirectories for all the other controllers. And the first controller we're going to be creating, which is what we've just created, is that home controller. And we created that home directory. And the only method in that home controller is this index action method, which is what we've got right here, index action. And the template for that is going to be index.html. So let's find that. So let's say client home index.html, just like so. We're going to load this template. I'm going to switch my screen again so you can see what I'm doing. So back on the front, and I'm going to reload this page, and let's see if it's going to find that template that we've just created. Reload, and so far that looks like it's working. I can see the title in the title bar. So let's actually go back to the editor and put some content or put some text in this index.html file and sort of like display it onto our screen. So we go to this index.html. Let's say welcome home, and let's put something in the body. Let's put a h1 tag, say Ricardo Miller. Let's do a paragraph tag. This is YouTube miniseries. Save that. I'm going to switch my screen again so you guys can see what's going to be outputted. There you go. So that's as easy as it is to use that method that we've already got built in. That's going to render whatever we got within that HTML template. And we can also make use of that second argument, which is that context that we can pass to our template. And we're going to demonstrate some of that right now as well. So I'm going to take you back to my editor, and we're going to pass in that second argument, and we're going to pass it in as a key value pair array. So I'm going to say what should we say? Should we say place of birth, or place, let's say first car. Going to assign that to a Ford, just like so. Let's say first pet, say a cat, just like so. So we've declared these variables that we're going to pass to our template, and we're going to display the value once we pass the key into the template. So if we go to our index.html template, how we declare variables in, because we're using a template in Engine right now, you can't see it. It's a very, very sort of like bare bone basic templating engine that I've put together. I don't think there's any need for it to be as advanced, because the intention for this framework was to make it headless, which means instead of actually rendering templates, we're going to be dispatching API routes or endpoints, which we can then use a JavaScript framework to consume those API and build their own front end. That was the original idea behind it, and that is still something I'm going towards. But the templating engine that I've got right here is purely for building the admin panel that we're going to be building later on, and to demonstrate some of these login and registration page that we got on our front end. So it's going to do what we want it to do, but we can even make those an API endpoint as well. But that's not something we're going to be tackling at the start of this series. That is something we're going to be doing much later on. But we're going to be leaving it as this at the moment. But so as I was saying, for these variables, if we want to display these variables, we're going to be using the curly braces. So we're going to say curly braces, double curly braces, and we called it what? We called it first car. So let's display our first car. And all we do that is we're still using PHP syntax, which is going to be $ first car. Just like so. We're going to switch my screen again. And we're going to reload this page. And there you go. First car is a Ford, right? So that's essentially how we pass variables to our templates. And as we go further along in the series, we're going to see how we can use other PHP functions to do certain logic, because we're not trying to do a lot of logic in our HTML file, but you cannot get away from a little bit of logic. But we're going to keep the logic very, very minimal, so when we do come to use it, there's going to be different syntax of how we go about doing that, and I'm going to demonstrate all of it as we go along. So just bear in mind that to display whatever we pass to the second argument, we could either use triple curly braces, which is going to escape any HTML entities, or if we just want to echo out that variable, we could do double curly bracket. You can see I could do triple curly bracket, and it's pretty much going to do the same thing. The first car, I think it was something like that. And if I reload the page again, sorry, I didn't even show you what I just did. So I did a triple curly braces, and it's pretty much going to pass the variable through HTML entities to sort of like sanitize any data that we're passing in, and it's still going to echo out the same result. So if I switch my screen again and reload my page, oh, we got an error. Oh, we got an error. So let me sort of like reduce this down for you so you can see what's going on. I want to go through these as well so I can actually see what you guys are seeing, and so we can go ahead and fix what that error is telling us. And by the way, this is our very own custom error handling. So we pass in all errors and PHP errors to this page, so we can render it in a much more, well, in a nicer way, put it like that. So what it's saying is that we've got a syntax error, unexpected token, we've got our single curly braces. So if I go back to, and if you look in the, if you go back to the main editor, we can see that we're missing a curly brace right there. We've got 3 on this side, but we only got 2 right here. So if we put that there, and this is something to do with the editor itself. When you sort of like it auto-completes something for you, but it's not really done it properly. So let's go back to front page. Let's reload. And you can see the result is still the same. We're still getting that Ford, right? So that's essentially how we display content from a HTML template, coming from our controller, our own controller. So we've got index action method, this view method, which is accepting the first argument, which is going to be the template, and the second argument, which is going to be the context that we pass into that template, and that could be an array. Well, it is an array of data that we can pass, and this could be any kind of data. We could pass all sorts and render in our template, right? So to shed a little bit of context on what we've done so far, our index action method is being, we have to suffix it with the action string, and it must be a protected method as well, for a reason I explained in the last video, that I am doing other stuff that is looking out for these action routes, and they have to be a protected method or else it won't be found, right? So a little bit of context is on the render method. This is a method that is defined within that base controller class, and as I was saying, this is one of the reasons why we must extend the base controller class, so we can get access to use these methods, which is going to help us out quite a lot, right? And I'm using, at the moment, I'm using Symfony HTTP Foundation response and request, and the response from a template is going through that response object. So it got all the headers that's being sent with the template and all of that good stuff as well. So it's not just bare bone HTML. It is going through that response object as well, right? And I can quickly show you that as well, just to put a bit of context onto it, which is going to be down in the core directory, and I've got the base controller, and this bit that I've highlighted, this is where it's going through that response object, and it's rendering that template and spitting out the result for us. I won't get in too much of this until we sort of like make headways in, so I can explain to you bit by bit what bit is doing. So if we close that, I'm going to close that. Now it's more than likely that we're going to be using multiple templates, so it wouldn't be wise to have to declare a header and footer in all of our template. In natural flow of how we normally do things, we normally have a separate template that we can extend into, that's going to provide the header and footer for us, or provide a common layout that we can extend into, and we can then render our content within a defined space that we can use across all other template. And this is going to be no different here, because the little framework that the little template engine that we've got have the capability to let us extend into other templates. So within my main templates directory, I'm going to create a new file, and I'm going to call it layout. Simply to say layout, just like so. And this layout template is going to be the base layout for our templates going forward on the front end side of it. So we can pretty much put all of our CSS files, all of our JavaScript files, all of our common layouts that we want to be the same across all of our templates for consistency, and we simply going to extend into this layout template. So in our index file, index.html file that I've just been working in, I'm simply going to clear these out, and I'm going to use another syntax within that templating engine, which is a similar syntax that you will see across a lot of different templating engine. It's going to be the curly brace, %, curly brace. So we've got the open curly brace, 2 %, and a closed curly brace. I was simply going to pass in our code in between the %. So what we're going to pass in is we're going to extend into that layout template. So we're going to say extend layout .html, just like so. So what we're going to do now is going to switch our screen again back to our browser. We're going to refresh, and we're going to see what's taking place. So back to our browser, reload, and you can see the content that we had is now gone. So we can define different content region that we want to inject into our layout.html template. And I'm going to take you back to the HTML, to the layout template, and to show you how we go about doing that. So that's my screen again. So in our layout template, we're simple. I mean, we haven't done any sort of like containment for this layout yet. We're simple, just want to get to how we go about doing certain things. And as we start to build it out, we will start wrapping these in container tags, right? So what we want to do is we want to use curly braces, % sign, close curly braces, and we want to say yield content, right? And when we say yield content, that's the name. We're pretty much creating a content block. So in our index template, we want to do something like this. We want to say open curly brace, % sign, close. We want to say block content, and we want to say, let's close that. I want to end that block, right? So anything that we pass in this content block is going to get injected into that yield content into what that we've defined within our layout.html. So if I do something like h1 tag again, put my name, something like that. Let's go back to our, and remember again, we got that yield content right there. So we're pretty much extending or creating blocks from this yield content, right? Which we define as block content within our index HTML template. So if I change my scene and I reload my page, there we go. We got our name again, right? So let's look over this again. So back into our editor, you see we've defined within that block content, we've defined our name. Within our layout template, we've yield that content block area right here, right? This is going to be the common layout for all of our templates. We're simply going to yield whatever we want to display or whatever we want to change from a template by template basis. For example, I could do something like yield title. So I say yield title, just like so. And in my index template, I could simply define a block title with a unique title for this particular page. And how I go about doing that is I'm going to say curly braces, % sign, curly brace. We're going to say block title, and we want to end that block. And in between the open and closing blocks, which is this bit, that's where we can define the title for our current page. And I'm going to say home page. I'm going to switch my screen again, and we're back on our index page. We're going to reload, and you can see that it says home page right at the top. If I look into the source, we can see that we're displaying home page, right? So we can pretty much use that yield function to yield whatever content we want anywhere within our template. So if I go back to my editor, back to my layout, you can see how we could pretty much yield whatever we want. We could do custom CSS that we can pass to, that we can use in different templates, JavaScript. If we want to yield a lot of different metadata across templates, we can do that as well. We can yield multiple content region. Again, it's simple, depend on how you want to go about doing it. And also note that we can't duplicate the content regions that we're creating. So if I created like yield content right here, I can't then create another yield content somewhere else. It has to give it a unique name so we can properly identify the different regions within our templates that we're using to extend, that we're extending into, right? So that's pretty much how we sort of like define a common template that we can use to provide a consistent look and feel across our entire application. So this the template we're going to be using from this point on forwards. As I'm saying, this is how we pretty much get that. So if we yield CSS, we just have to say block CSS and define our CSS in between the blocks, and we must also end that block or we're going to get a error, right? So that's pretty much all there is to templates. It's pretty simple. As I'm saying, as we go through it, we're going to be getting into more advanced stuff that we can pass to our templates. When I say advanced, what I'm talking about is like functions and methods that we can use to actually help us to define certain content, right? So that again is the view method and how we go about displaying templates, how we follow the convention to creating template structure, so we can actually I mean, as we get a little bit more advanced, stuff like this, we won't use this as much as you see. We're going to be using a different syntax entirely, which is going to automate the process for us a little bit. So, but it's important that I tell you from this point onwards that following the natural convention is going to actually help us out quite a lot, because once you start deviate, I'm not saying it won't work, it just means that we might have to do a little bit more to get the same result. If you stay on path, you get that result automatically for free. So that's going to be it for this particular video. The next one coming up, we're going to be introducing our security controller and everything that comes with that security controller. So see you in the next video.